Hello, my name is Rob Burns. I'm Senior Vice President of Surety with Travelers in Canada, and we're a proud corporate sponsor of the Canadian Construction Association. And as a sponsor, I have the pleasure of introducing the armchair discussion today. But before I do that, I'd like to say a few words about the CCA. You know, the last few months have been truly extraordinary, unprecedented for all of us. But I think it's been during that time we've all seen just the great work that CCA has been doing. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to say thank you. Thank you to the Canadian Construction Association, its board, its executive, its staff, and all those that make the Canadian Construction Association the dynamic association it is with its impact that's felt across the country. Thank you for being that organization that we can count on, that we can trust. And so it's with that, now I have the pleasure of introducing the armchair discussion today between Mary Van Buren, President of the Canadian Construction Association, and Mandy Rennehan, the CEO and founder of Freshco.ca. That's not the grocery store. It's a 24/7 full-service retail, maintenance, and construction provider operating across Canada and the eastern United States, serving clients like Apple, Home Depot, Lululemon, and Nike. Also known as the Bear, Mandy is the ambassador to the blue-collar industry and a champion for women in trades. Bear is known around the world as the blue-collar CEO. And so it's with that, I get to turn things over to Mary Van Buren, who will facilitate the discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mandy, for joining us here today. We were so looking forward to meeting you in person, and glad that we can do this virtually and to bring your message to our members from across Canada. You've had such an inspiring journey, and we have a lot to talk about today. And we're going to focus on the workforce. And prior to COVID-19, we've all been talking about the critical shortage, particularly of skilled workers for construction. And as we move toward COVID-19 recovery, thankfully, we've all been working together to flatten that curve. Workforce, we think, will again become an issue. So Mandy, could you share with us some of your thoughts around how the workforce has reacted to COVID-19, some of the challenges and maybe some of the opportunities that have come out of this difficult time?
Well, first of all, Mary, thank you for Zooming with me. My like I said before, I think, more of my comfortable spot is being on a stage and you being able to see all of this. And so thank you for that. And to answer your question, I think that, where I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, even from a very young age, I see opportunities in places where probably most people don't think to look. That comes from being poor and not having a lot of connections at the time. And I think that when this hit, when we look at the systemic trade issue that we had prior to this, I think that what happens is that economically people think, well, wow, you know what? Like, we're going to be fine now. And I think it's very important that we look at when there is such a systemic shift that's resulted from a pandemic like this, and I talk about economically, it doesn't mean that we're all going to be out of a job. It basically means that there's going to be cyclical areas in the industry that are going to suffer more than others. It's kind of like the idea that I use is, look at Newfoundland when the cod stocks went, basically beside the wayside. The Newfoundlanders acted as, the prized possessions for the Alberta oil fields because they all got in airplanes, they all had skills, and they all went out there because it just worked. And I think that that's one of the things that we're going to see happen here too. We're going to see that there may be a slowdown on certain infrastructure for the first year, for the simple fact that when you look at everybody's balance sheets and even the government's, people are really going to look at what are the SEV1 projects that need to be delivered? What are the things that we absolutely need to do while we restructure everything? So when you also look at, I think, but then, the one thing that everybody, I think, Mary, it's important to say, and I think that anybody that knows me, is that I don't know any other way to say things, but just candidly. Every company out there had voids. Every company out there has had, issues with different things. And I think that when we look at even mine, when you start looking really deeply, you have to dig very deeply into what's happened and know that in the history of the world, nobody's ever seen it shut down. So this is something that we need to look at collaboratively together. And I think that where construction is such an essential industry in so many different worlds, it's funny because people ask me all the time, they say, Mandy, what's maintenance? And I'm like, well, do you go get your car, serviced? Yes. I was like, well, you do maintenance for your car, so it still runs. I said, maintenance is just a smaller form of construction. I said, it's a smaller project. And I think that that's the other thing that we're going to see, Mary, is we're going to see a lot more things that maybe we're in the works of being torn down, that we're looking at things going up, that somebody's going to come back, and creativity is going to be our word today, Mary, is that creativity is going to have to come from the helm, and different architects, engineers, companies like mine and other companies out there are going to have to look at where are the opportunities here for us not only to keep people busy, but knowing that if we're going into job sites and having to keep a distance from each other based on a procedural level, I think that there's a mythology here that, for me, I've often thought that, and people really, and this is where I say this is where we really can show some stance and some progress in this industry, is that we've always looked at safety as only being about not cutting your fingers off, not falling off a roof, not being caught in the middle of a crane or a boom going back and forth. I think that these are the things in our industry that we've been known of safety. So when you look at the health part of this, it's never really been as dominant as it is now. And so the dominant part of this is, okay, so now all of these people that already wear different parts of safety gear and everything else, now they're being expected to wear certain types of gloves, face masks, and it's cumbersome. So what you're going to do, and I think it's important for everybody out there that owns a company or who is going forward, this is just another modality that we have to accept at this point and look and say, what are other ways and opportunities that we can look at this? Because I don't know about anybody else out there, but regular viruses, just regular flu viruses every year, takes 3 months out of my office, give or take, because we have to realize is that this is a different type of virus, but we've never really implemented the health part of this. I'm going to say more of a cleaning hygiene part. And it's never been a big thing in construction. And I think it's something that is an opportunity we're able to look and say, when everybody's picking up, different types of materials, we're digging holes, we're framing walls, we're right next to each other. We're yelling at each other that you're not doing your part, or, so there's all these different things happening on job sites that, we're spitting back and forth at each other. It's just the way it is. And so now for this to come in as a modality, I think has really made people think, wow, like, how are we going to do this? So that creative part of operations needs to be at the forefront.
Thank you. And as we look up to recruitment and barriers to working in construction, certainly the safety element does come up from time to time. People's perceptions, not necessarily reality. Yep. And do you think this heightened hygiene protocol, the hand washing stations, better access to toilets, is that going to help, do you think, attract a more diverse workforce? Or maybe talk about what are some of those barriers and opportunities. We know you're a champion of having more women in. Yeah. Will this help us?
100%. I think that, I use the example, and listen, people can really relate to examples. So when you look at right now, when this issue with the trucking association, couriers, all the tradespeople, basically everywhere that they would normally go have a coffee, a sandwich, go to the bathroom was locked out. But then so everybody's solution to that was to put porta potties in the parking lot and say, well, there you go. And so my idea was, no, that's not good enough. So we hauled out our luxury construction trailers, which are air conditioning, have foot pedals, that have, soapless soap dispensers. They're all set up for female, hygiene. So it's one of those things that, because we don't work in an office building as a white collar, why is it that it's okay that we're using porta potties on the side of the road? And I think that's the idea is that a lot of people in this industry, to be quite honest, are humble, Mary. They're humble. This is all they've ever been given. It's all that they've ever seen. So they've just accepted it as the norm. And I'm saying that for us to be able to really, how many people call me and say, Mandy, how do I get people? And then on top of it, how do I retain them? Mm-hmm. And I said, you have to make them feel like this is a profession that with a purpose, that they want to be in this for all the right reasons. And them coming from a warm, comfy apartment or home into a porta potty. And, a lot of people are going to say, Mandy, but, in some working, environments, this isn't an option. And I'm like, bullshit. That's not true. It's investing into these trailers or into these different items that allow people to have dignity, to be able to do the common things that every other person out there that works in an office building, works anywhere else, has this option. And I think that that's where, for me, when you look at investment, Mary, I think that that's where, if you want to invest, right now, the construction industry, the maintenance industry, all of it has shown that we need human beings more than anybody. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that for us to be able to get that talent, that different type of talent that we never thought that we needed or that we wanted, with AI and everything else coming to the forefront, we need so many different diversified human beings. But I can tell you what, you tell them that they're going out to a porta potty with cold water and the
minus 20.
Exactly. They're going to look at you and say, you don't pay me enough. I'm out of here. And that's what's going to happen, is that this is a chance for us to up our game. And that's what's happening in the back of the parking lot at my building, is that a lot of the truckers, couriers are like, Mandy, thank you. For God's sakes, thank you for giving us a dignified place to go to the bathroom while we work 12 or 14 hours. And I think that that's the key, Mary. It really is looking at the fact that this isn't just females. This is the new generation as a whole, is that they've grown up with technology and, maybe these dignified versions of living that, that some of our other older guys in the industry have just accepted it, and they're not going to. It's just that simple.
So those are some great tips about what we can do. One of the other themes is that women and other groups, Indigenous, are underrepresented in science, technology, engineering, and math. Yep. And so it makes it often difficult for businesses to recruit from the diversity, because there's just not enough diversity coming through the system. Yep. Any thoughts on education and the role that they play in either promoting a positive experience in construction or skilled trades as a career?
I think that, Mary, I want to unpack this a little bit to tell you that the reality is that when we look as a whole, we're getting similar people that have always that might have grew up in the trades, that love them, that understand them. These are the different types of people, a lot of times males, that are coming in. Don't get me wrong. You got to know something about me. Don't even let the hair fool you. I mean, I am I don't believe in segregation. I love my guys just like I love the girls. Like, for me, it's always been, and this is what I really push more than anything, is that when we've brought women into our reality and we've trained them and we put them out on site, our guys will say, I want her working with me tomorrow night. Well, it's like, well, why? Well, because she's awesome. Well, why is she awesome? Because she brings a whole different skill set that I don't have and I don't even want to try to utilize. And so we hear this a lot. I hear, Mary, a lot of the shop teachers, a lot of the teachers in all the schools around Canada. It's almost like they're telling me a secret. They're like, Mandy, they're like, bring us more women. And I'm like, why are we whispering? You know, and they're like, because it's almost like this elephant in the room of the fact that women, it's not just about us finding that gender parity, Mary. It's about us realizing that women make up maybe 4 to 5%, maybe, of our workforce out there. And the reality is, it's kind of like, I use the analogy of ball. You know, most people want to play on a mixed ball team because it's fun, it's unique, you know, it's just different. It's the same thing in this industry. If you only have 4% of women out there in a whole dynamic, massive, essential industry, you know what? You have a topsy-turvy issue with, it's just not really as progressive as it really could be. And it's not moving as quickly as it could be. So I think that when you look at Aboriginals, you look at females, you look at anybody marginalized, they're, Mary, way over here and thinking, where do I fit in this equation? And I will tell you, and I would say it on a stage, and I'm going to say it on Zoom, we suck at marketing in the construction reality. We really do. And that's why a lot of, you know, because we keep our head down and we work. Well, right now we need to be more than that. We need to market. We need to have cultures and brands that support diversity. And I mean, listen, I've had more of my guys that I've done business with forever look and go, okay, Mandy, that's great, but how do I do that? You know, because it's new for them. Just like the new modalities of COVID-19 are new for our job sites. People before thought, listen, I've got a great company. You know what? I employ people. I pay them well, all of the above, and I do great work. That's not enough today. It's just not. You have to really show people, who are you as a company? You know, what you do is actually secondary to the people coming in. And so when you look at the trust of a female coming into an industry that's completely male dominated, still with porta potties, you know, the idea is that they're looking and saying, how am I going to be supported in this? How am I going to be protected? How am I going to fit in? You know, and I think that that's a very interesting point for us to log, Mary, is that the fact is that people today are different, you know, and this is going to make people different, you know, and I think that when we look behind the struggle that women have in general, let alone coming into a male-dominated industry, we've got to market real, authentic stuff. And for a lot of companies out there, Mary, this isn't going to be hard because they're awesome to begin with. They just don't know how to market themselves. It's just that simple.
Yeah, you said earlier that it's a very humble industry, and I wholeheartedly agree. So we are working to help reposition the image of the industry, and yes, we have a campaign that we call Talent Fits Here. And so very much about how do I fit in, not necessarily as a woman, but even as the skills you have. Maybe you're very creative. Maybe you love project management. Maybe you're into technology. And so it's how do we position the industry to be attractive. And so we're working on that. We've also put together an outreach kit to go into high schools to talk about all the exciting things that are happening. And we're really looking forward to launching this campaign. And as you say, showing the amazing work that is being done. And we think it's very appealing to millennials who want to link what they do to a purpose and the pride that they can have. And we hear this from people in the industry all the time when they drive around their city or their community and they say, you know, I worked on that and I'm really proud of that. So we think the industry has a lot to offer and we need to keep promoting it. And one of the other tools that we've come up with is Canadian Construction Gives, because as you've talked about all the things that you've done for your community, the industry does this every day and they don't even think about it. It's what they do. And we look at the PPE that's been given. We look at the food bank, all the food that's been collected to help people who are hungry during this time. the training programs, you name it. The industry is just very selfless and goes out and helps. So yeah, we really believe that the industry needs to better promote and talk about the great things it's doing.
Well, collectively, I have a question for you, Mary, if that's okay. So when you talk about a campaign, have you guys done like a focus group around bringing different people from all different parts of the spectrum outside of our world to look at the campaign to see, is it the impact that's really going to get to people's hearts?
Yeah, so we've piloted it in a small way with youth and with the parents.
Okay.
And so that has confirmed the messaging.
Okay,
and our
good.
goal is to start it out small to get that feedback. And it's very much about stories. So profiling people who are already working in the industry and their stories, whether that's women, new Canadians, whatever their role happens to be. So I think we've got about 6 stories right now, because we think the personal approach is really important.
Oh, absolutely.
And for people to see, oh, that's someone like me, and showing that diversity, not talking about diversity, but showing diversity.
Yeah, and I think that, we all know the Newfoundland commercials of the clothesline and, call Marty. It's funny because on planes, different people, when I've flown around North America, they've looked and they were like, where's Newfoundland? And I'm like, why? And they're like, I just watched this commercial and I just want to sit out there on a cliff and an old chair that needs to be painted and watch clothes blow in the wind. And I think that that's why I ask about impact, because it really ties back to how do you get to the heart of people? How do you make them, want to come in? And I think that that's why there's an energy too, Mary, that when we look at, we just do things in the construction industry. We just do it. But the reality is that are we showing people who we are? Because the reality is that we're in a digital world, and people really truly it's funny because you'll watch different celebrities on Instagram and this and that, and all they're doing is taking pictures of themselves. And I mean, there's millions of likes. So you sit and you look and say, how do we get people to see the cool about us? And that's the one thing we've realized more so than anything, even, with my branding and different branding, is really at the end of the day, Mary, what you and I love to see in a project, over here that we think's phenomenal. Somebody coming into the industry wants to know more about who are we and how do they fit and why do they fit and why would they pick us? Because at the end of the day, I don't think it's really something that we need to know, that we're in this mess because of hierarchy and because of back in the day when the people that built Canada as a whole were treated like second-class citizens. These people that were polymaths in their own right. I mean, there wasn't anything they couldn't draw, build, facilitate, but they were treated differently because they weren't white collar. And I think that that's where, when you look at why we have such an influx of young people and even, people in their second phases of their life going to university, not going to trade school, is because they've been told that in order for them to be accepted by society as a professional, that they need to go to university. And we just all know that that's just not friggin' true. I mean, I'm a pilot project that went really right, and I have a grade 12 education. So the idea is that I think it's important that we know that when we look at this perception, and this is also, Mary, something that I've been working on with the federal government, with a couple other co-chairs, is we're looking at launching something that really attacks that perception and that narrative, and really showing how amazing this industry is, the people in it, and that we welcome diversity. It's no different than any other industry. We just get a bad rap, to be quite honest, Mary, because everybody's out in overalls and there could be something that happened that was really dirty that day. I'm like, dirty makes us better, man. You know what? Like, it really does. And it's funny because when I watch some of my people, some of my girls that, they work in our mill shop, one minute I go in, they've got the full gear on, the overalls, they're building cabinets, kitchens, you name it. And the next thing I know, I'm sitting in the parking lot on a call and I see them walk out of the gym at the back of the bathroom in the gym, and they're dressed to the nines, heels on, getting in their car, going to meet their girlfriends for a martini. And I'm like, that's what we need to shoot. The duality of the industry, and about that you can be feminine, pretty, all the above, but you can still kick somebody's arse in that mill shop to death. So, these are the things that really need to become part of our messaging, Mary.
Well, thank you so much, Mandy. Any last words in terms of your home province, Nova Scotia, and some of the opportunities that you see regionally?
You know what? Nobody can see my heart, but listen, it's been about a half an inch out of my chest since all of this has happened. And like I said, I'm just a billboard for Nova Scotia, the Maritimes as a whole, but Nova Scotia, it's where I grew up. And, it's always been one of my mandates, other than changing the perception in our industry, to really show people the beauty in the Maritimes, and especially in Nova Scotia, knowing that the opportunities for the construction industry to develop over there. It's like I always said, I don't understand everybody in the bigger provinces that buy cottages 2 hours away that takes them 4 hours to get there because of traffic, just to be on a crowded lake that's way too expensive with, mosquitoes the size of rats. I'm like, get on a plane, buy property, over in Nova Scotia on a lake that's just for you, or just your new best friend next to you. Enjoy seafood, enjoy the best people, the best beer, you name it. I just think that when we talk about our opportunities in development, the reality is that we're all after this are going to rethink our busy lives, and we're really going to look and say, what do I want from here? Do I want a different pace? Do I want a different life? So I'm going to be pushing for much more transportation and transpotting over in Nova Scotia, and I'm going to look to all my buds in the construction industry to pick up the work.
Well, thank you again, Mandy. It's been really fun to hear your perspective and the work that you're doing to help change the perception of the industry and to make it more inclusive, and just the exciting potential that's there. And also want to thank Travelers very much for sponsoring this edition of our Zoom interview with Mandy. So thank you, Mandy.
Okay, thank you. Bye.